this though. Twangy because it's mine.
It's a little taller.
It's mine.
How come we never do this one? I feel like that's one of these ones we always look at and we're like, oh, we should do this one too.
That's right.
I don't have the chords for that.
We got it.
Oh, I was doing a different one. I was doing
Why would you go past Shlomi? Why wouldn't you stop at Shlomi?
I don't think I know Shlomi. What does Shlomi do that? We do it? You just did it. Is that one?
So,
Okay, go tell it's time. Oh yeah. I think that was a minor or something.
so no, I'm sorry. I'm stuck on the other one. Sorry.
Nope, in the seats. In the seats. Thank you. That's what right? I feel like that's a Nasseray one.
It's slow.
The one I just sang is not Shlomi.
Shlomi.
That one's not Shlomi. The first one you did is. Those are different songs.
The same song.
They're different tunes. It's different than, hold on. They are different songs. They may have the same chord progression, but they are different songs. All right, so you ready?
Are we ready?
Excellent.
All right.
All right.
Feet.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're so glad you could join us here tonight on another one of these Shabbats at home. And it's also the first Shabbat after daylight savings time. And does it feel good to be able to actually look out the window at daylight savings and see sunlight still. So that actually means that theoretically Shabbat does not fall for another 14 minutes. But just the same, we are going to start our Shabbat a little bit early by welcoming you all and singing the words, Hinei matov u'manayim, how good and pleasant it is to be here together, at least watching, at least together in spirit, as we celebrate Shabbat and bring in this joyous time together. Hinei matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov, shevet achim gam yachad. So these Shabbats at home, may become something that continues even past COVID, because we recognize that for many of you, this has actually become a new ritual, a new way to be able to bring in Shabbat together. And so whether you are watching services just by yourself, whether you're watching with other people, we hope that you're able to participate in these Shabbat rituals and sing and pray along with us. And so we always start with those rituals that happen at our Shabbat tables, which is the lighting of our Shabbat candles, candles and our blessings. So if we can have Jonah and Molly help us with the lighting of the candles. Maybe Dad will help with this one.
It's childhood, and once you become a bar mitzvah, it becomes easy to use.
No, it will not.
Before,
It will never become
before
easy
this
to
year.
use.
All right, let's do it together. Okay? Come on, quick.
And then you let go once I get it. I'm always worried that we're gonna do that.
There we go. Okay. All right, so we're going to bring in Shabbat together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. All right, and then if you'll raise your glasses, so we say Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pari hagafen.
L'chaim.
And then we have another beautiful achala. This one, Maura Diane said, is almost like a babka, which is so delicious. That means it's sweet.
I heard there's a bunch of things.
Yes, a bunch of delicious things in there. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. All right, why don't you take a little? Because the way that she made it, well, why don't you just take a little bit off the end? She said it flattened a little bit because of all the yummy, delicious things she had in there. That's what makes it look more like a babka. Wow, it looks amazing. All right, so one of the things that we encourage you to do, if you wish, is to give some special blessings to the members of your family, which is a tradition to do on Shabbat, and we start with sons.
Yisimcha Elohim k'Ephraim v'chi Menashe. May God make you mighty and wise like Ephraim and Menashe.
Yisimech Elohim kasar Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah. May God make you like our matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And then all together we say, Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha.
May God's light shine upon you even in the darkest places.
May God's countenance be lifted over you. May you be granted with wholeness and peace. Shabbat shalom. Shalom. So we welcome the Shabbat angels that we are taught to come into our midst each Friday night when we're celebrating Shabbat together. And we say to them, Shalom Aleichem, welcome to you, you ministering angels. If you're following along in our Siddur, it can be found on page 24. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boechem L'Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Ni L'Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seidchem L'Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so we call each other to worship, remembering that even though we are apart, still we are in this experience of prayer, of praising God, of praying for each other together. And our Baruch Hu, if you're following along, again, can be found on page 28. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. We pray of God's oneness, reminding ourselves that God is in each of us, that God is everywhere. Even when we can't feel God's presence, we still know in our hearts that God is there. So we sing the words of the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kavod Malchuto, Le'olam Aved. And if you have your Siddur, we're going to continue tonight with the words of the Ve'ahavta on page 36.
Ve'ahavta
et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher achi mitzavacha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth.
The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love.
From bondage in Egypt, we were delivered. At Sinai, we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing songs of freedom on the shores of the sea. But we know that even after we are given the gift of freedom, that still we pray for God's protection. And every time that we experience violence in our nation and our homes, we pray, God, please extend the shelter of peace and safety, not over us, over our families, but for all our country and all the world. We sing God, Hashkivenu, spread your shelter over us, on page 42. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. People will sometimes ask us, what are the things that you pray for in a Jewish service? What will we hear if we come to hear prayers on a Friday night and a Saturday morning? And while, of course, each song we do, each prayer we do has its own special meaning, so many of them are all just prayers about protection and shalom. And so we turn now to yet another, to Shalom Rav on page 60. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. Ki ata melech Adon Lachol Shalom. Ki ata Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol eitz uv'chosha bishlomecha. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim La'olam. We pray for peace, which is shalom, but so too we pray for wholeness, shleimut. And when we pray for wholeness, we're often praying for wholeness of mind and body and spirit. And those are the words that we offer when we sing Mishaberach. So if there's someone that you're thinking of, someone who could use a little bit of healing at this time, whether it's in their hearts or their spirit or their bodies, I invite you to direct your thoughts towards them so that they know, so that God knows that you are praying for them. This week in particular, we are thinking of those in our community who are ill. We're thinking of Lisi Weinstein, of Jerry Krause, of Arlene Alpern, of Charles Beach, of Stanley Beresdorfer. For all of them, and for all of you, we sing Mishaberach. Mishaberach Avoteinu Mekor Baracha Le'yamoteinu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. And one more prayer for peace. Oh, say shalom bimromav, oh ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oh, say shalom bimromav, oh ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. So in just over a week, 8 days from now, we are going to celebrate Passover. And I just want to ask, how many of you noticed when I said that exact same thing last week? I think maybe only my mother caught it, but I was wrong. It's not last week. Now it's only 8 days away from Passover. I think I was just so excited about Passover. Actually, the truth is, I don't get that excited about Passover. First of all, don't tell anyone, but I don't really like matzo ball soup. I know, it's like so not Jewish, but I don't really like matzo ball soup. And while I like the Seder, as some of us were talking about last week at our Women's Connection event about creating your own Seder, I think sometimes hosting a Seder or leading a Seder can actually be a tremendous amount of stress, trying to make sure that you are creating just the right experience for everyone who may be at your Passover table. What I will tell you that I love about Passover, the one thing I do love, is I love the Haggadah. I love the teachings in the Haggadah. So many of them speak to me. And my very favorite one, it's so much my favorite that honestly you have probably heard me talk about it from this bima so many times you probably also know it by heart. But my favorite line from the Haggadah says, B'chol dor vador chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim, that in every generation, each person needs to see themselves as if they were the ones who were taken out of Egypt, who were taken out of slavery. And part of why I love this line is because it's just so impossible. I mean, there is no way that any of us could really imagine what it was like to be a slave in Egypt. We are so far away from that in our lives now. And especially when you say it at the Passover table, you have to remember that when you're sitting at the table, you are supposed to be very comfortable. You're supposed to be reclining and have a cushion under you, and you know that you're about to eat. Everything smells wonderful. It is supposed to be the most comfortable, unslavery-like experience possible. And that's when you say, you have to remember what it was like to be a slave in Egypt, so much so that it's as if you were truly there. Now, why does the Haggadah do this? We know that in part it must be about teaching us empathy, right? Not just sympathy, where we can say, oh, it must be hard to go through what you went through, but true empathy, where you actually can say, I do know how hard that is what you're going through because I went through it too.
But why specifically do we have to learn this lesson of empathy when we are so comfortable? It's because when we are comfortable and we are feeling good, that's when it is hardest to remember those lessons. That's when it's hardest to think about suffering, to think about what other people may be going through. When you are comfortable and lying down and your belly is full and you're surrounded by family and friends, you do not want to think about suffering, your own or someone else's, but that's when the Haggadah comes in and says, you need to be thinking about this. And I think that this is a very important lesson for us at this point in history, at this point in our lives. Because here we are now, and it has been a year since this pandemic started, and now things are starting to look up, right? We're hearing now that the vaccines are going faster and faster, and things are starting to open up, and you can actually be in your home with other people who are vaccinated. I mean, things are really looking good, and we are starting to get comfortable. And our tradition says, you should not feel that comfortable right now. The minute that you are feeling comfortable, you have to be aware of all of the suffering that you may have experienced and that others have experienced as well. Otherwise, there's no way to learn from the past and from those moments of hardship and tragedy. This week alone seemed like such a horrible and perfect example of that. As we saw this tragic killings, the murders in Atlanta, and we recognize that we cannot forget for a moment the racism that still exists in our country, the misogyny that still exists in our country, the hatred that is out there that can come just from saying hateful words, can lead to dangerous and tragic acts. My friends, we cannot forget that that is still the world in which we live. We cannot forget that this is the worst mass killing that has happened in a year. But now that things are opening up again, my friends, we cannot forget. But so too, there are positive things that we should be remembering as well. There are beautiful things from this past year that we must try to remember. We cannot forget. Each of us have experienced different moments of joy, different moments of silver linings this past year. I know for some of us, it has given us more chance to be with our family and friends. We have to remember how joyful it is to be able to be with those people who are the very nearest and dearest to us and not lose sight of that once we get comfortable and the world opens up. Many of us have taken this past year to be able to learn new things about ourselves, to figure out maybe what we want to do with our lives that may be different than we did before. Let us not sink back into complacency just because we get comfortable. Even here at TI, we've had so many conversations thinking about what will we change when the world opens up again? What have we learned from this experience of being able to worship like this, of being virtual in different ways? Have there been moments of beauty and joy that we can remember as well? Everything the Passover Seder teaches us is do not get so comfortable that you forget what you have learned. Whether it's lessons that are so difficult about the hardships that exist in our world, or whether they're the beautiful lessons what we've learned along the way, we have to try and remember. And as long as we do, as long as we can remember, then maybe generations from now, people will sit at their Passover Seders and they will say, B'chol dor v'dor. In every generation, people should remember what it was like for those people who lived through the pandemic of 2020, everything that they learned and everything that they taught us. So I'll invite you now, if you will, to join with us as we continue our service, turning now to the words of the Aleinu, which are on the bottom of page 282, if you're following along in your Siddur.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחת האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל עמונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. We take this time now to remember those who have been taken from us in recent days, and our hearts go out to their families in sympathy as we recall their names: William Billy Eisman III, Leon Clearman, Bernard Miller, Jack Wickman. We now recall the names of those the anniversary of whose death occurs on this Shabbat, and whose names have been inscribed in the archives of our congregation or on the Wall of Honor for a perpetual memorial: Teresa G. Agatstein, Irvin Bettman, Michael Blumenfeld, Charlotte Chasen, Samuel R. Cohn, Rachel Cohen, Bella Cohen, Anna Kotler, Dorothy Henrietta Dolgen, Abraham Edison, Clara Binder Enger, Carolyn Elaine Finkelstein, Alberta H. Fisher, Samuel L. Fox, Bertha Frensdorf, Ann Steiner Friedman, Sally Friedman, Isidore Fry, Albert Gelber, Stella Summers Glazer, Julius Glazer, Martin H. Goldberg, Cecilia Goldman, Dr. Leo Gottlieb, Philip Graham, Harry Greenberg, John Julius Greenberg, John J. Hamilton Jr., Rose Schwartz Hirsch, Sadie Herman, Sarah Shire Hirsch, Claire J. Hyman, Sadie Pill Jacobson, Arthur Jungman, Ernestine Kahn, Raymond Cohn, Emily Landauer, David Levine, Ellis Levine, Mildred R. Levy, Emma Berg Lowenstein, Samuel Mages, Emil Manny, Ethel Orchard, Ida Platt, Mitzi Ruth Reiser, Henry A. Rawson, Harriet Spire Rostenberg, Ruth Ann Rubin, Dina Sachs, Moisey Samoilovich, Harold Sandmill, Sam Schechter, Ida Schechter, Alvin Sirks, David Silverman, Catherine Silverman, Walter J. Skrenka, Anna Hendon Steinbach, Yetta Stromfeld, Bernice Tenenbaum, Edward Tepper, Ira Wagner, Bill Wallace, Arthur Michael Waschauer, Dr. Albert G. Weiss, Clara Westheimer, Abraham Wolf, Morton L. Zock. So for those names and the names we keep in our hearts, we join in the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divrach yirteh v'yamlich machuteh, b'chayachon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'emru amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'mei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei dekudusha b'richu, La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran ba'ama v'emru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'emru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'emru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru amen. So for those of you who like to try and guess what the closing song is each week, those of you who are musical fans probably guessed it already. Everyone loves this musical, don't they?
I don't know.
No, they really don't.
I don't know how they would. Well, I hear you.
Well, we actually did take the confirmation class to see this musical in 2010. I think
Is it 2010?
I think so.
I don't think. No.
Well, whatever it was, everyone hated it except for me. I
loved it.
cried like a baby. Really? Did you like it? The
I
kids
liked
hated it.
Yes.
Well,
I think
it's a great opening song, even if you don't like the show. The show is The Fantastics.
Also Harry Belafonte.
And Jerry
several.
Orbach. I mean, like, the best. Try to remember the kind of September when life was slow and oh so mellow. Try to remember the kind of September when grass was green and grain was yellow. Try to remember the kind of September, when you were a tender and callow fellow. Try to remember, and if you remember, then follow. Try to remember when life was so tender that no one wept except the willow. Try to remember when life was so tender that dreams were kept beside your pillow. Try to remember when life was so tender that love was an ember about to billow. Try to remember, and if you remember, then follow. Deep in December, it's nice to remember, although you know the snow will follow. Deep in December, it's nice to remember, without a hurt, the heart is hollow. Deep in December, it's nice to remember the fire of September that made us mellow. Deep in December, our hearts should remember and follow. Shabbat Shalom.